Well, hi everyone, and I'm with a really special guest today, Deb Dana. Deb has taken Dr. Stephen Porges' Polyvagal Theory and brought it into clinical practice. And today we are going to be talking about women's trauma and the nervous system. And the reason why is because we have the Global Women's Trauma Summit coming up this Thursday and Friday. And again, delighted to have Deb on that conference. So Deb, talk a little bit about, women trauma and the impact on their nervous systems.
It is it is fascinating to think about through the biology, isn't it, of trauma and how our nervous systems are impacted by the role we play in our families, in society, and in our lives. And for women, I think if we want to consider the messages we're getting and how our nervous system interprets or neurocepts those messages, right? Our brains can make up lots of stories, and we often go to our brain to sort of figure out how the world is impacting us. But if we go beneath the brain to the nervous system and think, as I'm moving through the world, and I have all these cues of danger that are coming towards me. If I think about the many roles that I play in the world, I'm a woman. I'm living in the United States, where choice is now compromised. So the lack of choice impacts my nervous system. I'm a caregiver, right? That impacts my nervous system and all the messages I get about how to do that. And so what I think we're discovering is that these cues of danger that are bombarding us now, starting with the pandemic and now going through, all the ways we are recognizing social injustice, gun violence, climate issues, all the ways that we as women are holding this, perhaps differently than the men in our lives. So as we are beginning to understand this and really go to the level of the nervous system, we find that the unpredictability, the unfamiliarity, and the overwhelming number of cues of danger that are coming at us are really testing our capacity to refill, to rest, to recover, to be able to keep going. And I think, I was thinking as you were talking about women's nervous systems, and in my experience, and I'll be 70 next year, so I've got a few decades of being a woman in the world. There's this sense of keeping on, right? That women, we take, we manage, we heal, we nourish, we do all that, and at the expense of our own nervous system. Right. Which is not to say that men do not as well, but here we're really focusing on women's nervous systems. And I think we are at a point where I notice in the people I'm coming into connection with, nervous systems are depleted. We are drained. And we have a history of not knowing how to stop and recover. Right. And recovery is incredibly important for being able to then offer again. So, perhaps one of the things that I'm noticing, and as I go around and speak to audiences that for the most part are primarily women, speaking to clinical audiences, lots and lots of women, I hear this over and over. I'm, we talk about burnout, right? Okay. It's a nervous system that is drained, and we have not learned or attended to filling again. So that's a long-winded answer to this question of what is happening. And I think we offer, and we don't know how to either receive or take care of ourselves. Either one, we don't do very well.
And then one of the things that I know myself and others are really excited about for this women's conference this week is that we're going to be learning about polyvagal theory and, what kind of happens to a woman's nervous system when, as you've been talking about, one experiences like socialization of trauma through sort of messaging in society, when there is sort of, abuse or rape or violence towards women, abortion, birth trauma, that sort of thing. So do you want to say a little bit of, perhaps about, just give a little bit of a taster around what kind of happens to our nervous systems when, women experience either violation or forms of socialization, which can be traumatic to the nervous system?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's important for us to recognize that, right? Because we create patterns of protection that we simply enter into, and the stories of survival that come along with those patterns of protection feel normal to us because we simply enter into the state and the story that comes along with it. So as we take a step back and recognize the incredibly creative way our nervous system protects us by taking us into either that pathway of sympathetic fight and flight, or the pathway of dorsal collapse, go through the motions, right? That those are survival states, and they have particular survival stories that come along with them. And the state of ventral regulation is the state of connection, of communication, of feeling safe enough to navigate the world on my own terms. And there are particular stories of possibility that come along with that state. And so sometimes we have a hard time recognizing the state, but we really hear the story, right? And I know I have my commonly entered into stories. And sometimes
Me
it
too.
takes there's somebody on the outside saying, "Wait a minute. What are you doing?" Right? For me to take a step back and go, "Oh, right. That story is so habitual because it arises from that state that I simply enter into. I don't even recognize it." So part of our work in making a change is to recognize. So notice and name is always where we begin, right? Notice, where is your nervous system right now, right? Where is it? Are you in a state of feeling safe enough to be curious, to explore, to stand up for what you believe in, to have a story of possibility? Or are you feeling a bit of under threat in some way, in which case you're going to go to a story that helps you survive? And sometimes we silence ourselves in service of survival, or we speak out in rage and anger, and are labeled in a certain way because, again, it is a survival state. Or we experience the incredible anxiety that so many of us feel. We worry, we're anxious, and we get caught in that story. I can't do anything, right? There. What do I do? How do I do this? It's that anxiety flooding. Or, my particular favorite, and the place I go to often, is that dorsal. I'm going through the motions so I can get the basics done that need to be done, but I'm not really here doing it. And that's
Mm.
the survival story of becoming invisible. That was my safe place growing up in response to my dangerous environment, become invisible. And so many of us become invisible in order to survive. And now the call to action is, how do we be seen in a way that is regulated enough to not be an automatic threat to others? Because as we come out of the dorsal invisibility, we travel through some of that mobilizing energy, and I can become incredibly activated and become dysregulated because I have so much energy flooding, and I have so much I want to say and do, and I want to be heard and seen and listened to. And yet, if I can't come to enough regulation around that, my nervous system sends a cue of danger to the nervous systems around me, and then they move into their own survival state. So what we're going to talk about in the Women's Trauma Summit is, how do we stand up for what we believe in from a regulated place where I can be seen not as a cue of danger biologically. I'm not even talking about story-wise, but biologically, can I be a cue of regulation so that others can connect and we can communicate?
And one of the things, like, I really love about what you're going to be speaking about, Deb, is what you're referring to about, teaching our clients and our patients and ourselves actually to become more aware as women around what's kind of happening when we're outside, what's happening in our personal lives, what's happening or what's previously happened, because I think those states and the stories are often missed. People find themselves just in the dialogue or just in the state or doing things that they just do because they're not aware. And polyvagal theory and you putting it into practice seems to really sort of conceptualize how people have been doing what they've done.
Yeah, because, if you think about, your life, right? And the patterns you have created out of necessity, right? Our nervous system is always working to keep us alive, to serve our safety, right? And it takes us being able to move out of that energy and into the energy of regulation, to have a moment to, metaphorically, our nervous system needs to have a moment to catch its breath so that it can get out of the pattern, right? The habitual response pattern that we all have created, right? And when we do that, the difficulty is when we do that, it's often very alarming to us, right? Because it sort of changes everything. I see the world differently, right? And so one of the things we want to also create are communities, right? We need community to step out of our habitual patterns of protection and be able to explore, how do I do this differently? Right? Because left on my own, my nervous system is going to very easily and quickly take me back to my pattern of protection. As soon as there's a cue of danger, it knows what to do, right? And it takes a lot of energy to stay present and stay in the explicit knowing, because all this is working below the level of our awareness. So to bring it to awareness can be exhausting. To do that ongoing awareness, exhausting. But if I have a partner in crime, so to speak, if you're going to help me with this, right, then you can say, "Ooh, let me help you. Let me see if I can put that into words and see if it fits." Or even just show up in an email saying, "How are you?" Right? Because it's that community, that connection that is so vital in order for us to create new stories. And that's what we need to do. We're creating new stories. And in order to create a new story, my biology has to support that.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like one of the things you're talking about is a really, really key point in polyvagal theory is the concept of social engagement and that concept of connection and being with and co-regulated either by another or together.
Yeah.
I want to say a little bit more. And I think, especially at this time when there is so much stuff going on globally, whether
Mhm.
it's the war in Ukraine, whether, it's conflicts about abortion law in the United States, whether it's something happening with Korea. Say a little bit more, Deb, about really the importance of social engagement and how we can really use that connection when we treat our patients and clients.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fascinating because tomorrow is election day here in the United States, and talk about disconnection and conversations that we can't have or haven't had, that we can't manage to listen to each other, right? So in this case, we have polarized um, world, right? We have two different political parties that can't find a way to speak to each other, that can't, in my world, have enough regulation in their biology to be able to be curious about each other and have the difficult conversations. And so as this is going on, everybody else's nervous system gets dysregulated along with them. So that this we co-dysregulate as well. And that's what's happening, this co-dysregulation,
Right.
large groups of people. So to the co-regulation, is really about your nervous system and mine helping each other find enough of that energy of safety and connection, and then savoring that, staying there helping each other be there and deepen that connection. The interesting thing about co-regulation with our clients is often we are the first nervous system that is predictably regulated, that their nervous system can reach out and feel safe. And so we have to offer over and over and over, because the first offering might catch the attention, but it's not enough trust there. So over and over and over builds trust. And that's what we're looking for. We offer that to our clients, but that's what we're looking for in our personal lives as well. Who are the small groups of people, maybe one or two? You don't need huge groups. They will grow, but one or two people who you can depend on.
Yeah.
Right? You can show up messy and dysregulated and know they will help you come back to regulation. That's what we need in our lives. That's the beauty of co-regulation. You can do that for me, and then the next time I can do that for you. Because if we talk about reciprocity is not a give and take one-to-one thing. Right? It leans one way. I may need to lean on you more now, and then it leans back the other way. You can lean on me. And there's this lovely flow that goes back and forth. That's reciprocity. That's what we're looking for. That's not counting, oh, I showed up for you 3 times. It's your turn. It's like, no, when my nervous system can offer, I will. And then I know yours will when it can, and I can receive. That's what we're looking for. That's the nervous system flow that nourishes.
And one of the terms that I get curious about is when you utilize the word curiosity. And say a little bit more, particularly, in the context, we've got this women's conference coming up this Thursday, Friday. We've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women registered from all over the world, as well as men who work with women. Talk a little bit about, perhaps the brain, the nervous system, and the power of just being curious. What state might people be in, and how does that help?
So we have emergent properties, a term I love, emergent properties. And that simply means this is what rises when you're in a certain state. And only when you're in enough of that ventral regulation. You don't have to be fully immersed in it, but you have to have a critical mass of it circulating in your system. Then you can become curious. Curiosity emerges from biological nervous system regulation. If you are in a survival state, if you've entered one of your patterns of protection, you can't be curious, not because you don't want to, because your biology says no. And that's a lovely way to think about it. Does my biology say yes to curiosity? It does when I have enough of that regulated state going on. And for us, when you work with clients, or even when you just show up for another person you live with or love or work with, if you bring curiosity and nothing else, you are doing something powerful. Something powerful. If you show up in a regulated nervous system state and simply offer that because you don't know what else to do, it is beyond you, it is overwhelming anything else, but that you can do, that is a powerful intervention. And that, I think, is, when I get to that place, which happens often nowadays, you look out into the world and the systems feel so broken. I don't even know where to start, but I can start here. And I can be regulated with another human. And those cues of safety that I then send to another human invites their nervous system to feel safe, come to regulation. And then they offer that out into the world. And if we think about it in this way, every nervous system in the world can touch every other nervous system, right? One by one. That then allows me to feel hopeful. That brings me some hope, right? That maybe the intervention simply is me being regulated and then offering that to the people around me. Maybe that's what I can do in this moment in time when the world feels so crazy and out of control. Mm.
I could continue to ask you questions, Deb, but I'm going to stop because somebody asked, "Is the summit being recorded?" It absolutely is being recorded. So if you can't join us, do buy the recording package. And Deb, we're going to be I'm so looking forward to seeing you later this week. Actually, talking a lot more about some of the points that you've just briefly expanded upon. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to everyone who has joined us for a little bit of social media fun. And if you want to know more, we've got 16 incredible female pioneers talking about women's trauma, from everything from incest to violence to birth trauma. There's going to be things on EFIT and trauma, you name it. We've got Pat Ogden, we've got Deb Dana, Ruth Lavius, Ebony Webb, Dr. Sue Johnson join us. So from me to you, thank you, and either good morning, good night, and good afternoon.